Rev up your engines!
Well, finally, used car prices are starting to come down. Now, they have a massive 59% plunge for the wholesale price of cars. That's the price that the used car dudes buy the cars for. Then they sell them to you. Unfortunately, those, well, at least the asking prices, everybody knows used car dealerships are basically scumbags. They buy as cheap as they can and they sell as high as they possibly can. They haven't lowered their asking prices yet. But let me tell you, the actual prices, if you're buying something that isn't super popular, you can get a good deal. A guy brought me a Honda the other day. There were 3 of them on the guy's lot and they'd been sitting there for months, right? So he bought one and saved himself 10 grand over what they were asking. Right? And he looked back the other day, this was like 3 months ago, he said the other 2 were still sitting there, he hadn't sold them. So there's a big deal of difference between what they ask and what they go for. Because unfortunately, what they ask is often shown as being the value of the car. You look it up in those stupid books that give you car values, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's based on what the used car dealers tell them they're worth. It's total nonsense. There's no logic behind it, right? Other than the car dealers charging too much money for used cars. In the real world, they're starting to come down too, but the used car lots, they're paying 59% less than they were. So if you're looking at a used car, say, hey, I know you guys are paying 59% less. I'm not paying you these inflated prices anymore. So unless you're one of those people with horrible credits and that's the last ditch and they're the only place that'll sell you a car with high interest, you don't have any choice then. But if you saved your money and did good deeds with stuff or have great credit and you can borrow money somewhere else other than a car lot, you can talk them down quite a bit now because prices are coming down. Well, they're not going to be making the Camaros anymore, and oddly enough, usually when they say this is the last model, people buy them, they think it's going to be collectors. Chevy Camaro sales fell 54% during the first quarter of 2024. I mean, it's bad enough that last year they only sold 7,780 of them in the first quarter. This year they only sold 3,574 in the United States. And even worse, they only sold 242 of them in Canada, 46 of them in Mexico, and 49 of them in Brazil. Last year, 2023, the first quarter, they sold 6. But they sold 49 in 2024, so they could say sales of the Camaro were up 800% in Brazil. Basically what it comes down to is Americans aren't interested in sports cars, hardly at all anymore. And of course, GM doesn't make quality stuff anyway. Camaros were discontinued before, then they came back, now they're discontinuing again. But it's kind of interesting because normally with the sports car stuff like that, guys flock to buy them and pay extra money for them because it's the last model they ever made and they think they're going to be collector's items. Well, I guess people are wise up and realize, who wants to collect that garbage? And they're not selling them. So all these people, we want sports cars, we want sports cars. They're just blathering idiots that most of the world doesn't want them anymore. And they scream about, yes, we want this, we want that, we want this. When they made automatic sports cars only, and then they said, we want you to bring back the manual. They brought back the manual, and the sales went down even further. So Americans really aren't in love with sports cars anymore. There's in the past, they're in love with SUVs and trucks now. So these companies that make these sports cars, why don't you just give up? Well, Elon is hot air balloon. Oh, we're going to save the planet with our Teslas, blah, blah, blah. Well, Tesla's now being sued over air pollution in the factory in Fremont, California, his original factory for building cars, right? They say that Tesla's allowed unabated emissions in Fremont, California. The lawsuit that was filed in federal court said Tesla violated a law hundreds of times since January 2021, emitting harmful pollution into the neighborhoods surrounding the factory. They put him on a top 100 list of annual polluters list of California. Now, the EPA fined him $275,000 in 2022. Finding them $275,000. How do they come up with this peanut money? Billions and billions of dollars at work, and they get a $275,000 fine. That'd be like you and me, here's a $4 fine. Like you're really going to care, right? Obviously, it didn't fix the problem. They've done testing, and the lawyers for the plaintiffs say the neighbors have been exposed to excess amounts of air pollution, including nitrogen oxides, arsenic chemicals. Tesla did not respond to comments when the reporters asked them what was going on. Tesla's received 112 violation notices since 2019. Yeah, well, he's still going. He was going to clean the world up, he said. Well, maybe not around my factories. Do as I say, not as I do, right? Tesla also has a history of repeated fires in the paint shop where they prime and paint the cars. Here we go with more hypocrisy from Elon and his electric car company, right? They're polluting where they're building the cars. They're supposed to be saving the earth from pollution. I don't understand this. What could possibly be going wrong? Worldwide Monkey says, why is my SRS lights on? I got a 96 Honda Accord. I have the SRS light. I bought a service light tool. I have no idea what's going on. What should I do to fix it? You really kind of screwed on that for two reasons. One, it's a 96, right? And on a Honda, it won't work on an OBD port. You have to go to a newer one that's going to do any of that stuff. So you'd have to have a Honda mechanic with a Honda dealer scan tool to check out that airbag system. They are very, very complex. Now, you're wasting your time trying to reset it. If your light's on, it's on for a reason. And if you reset it, it might not even reset, because if there's a problem, the computer won't reset it. Or let's say you reset it and it went off. As soon as you drive it, it comes back on. There's a problem. And the only way you're going to find that is a dealer scanner on it, because it's a 96. It's so old. None of the aftermarket stuff is going to give you that information. So you're going to have to go to a dealership, and they're going to kind of laugh at you. That car's so old, they don't even want to work on those things. I doubt if some of the parts are even available for them. Let's say you needed an airbag module. There might not even be one available for that old car. But that's the only way you can do it. Now, let's say if it was a new one, like a 2006. Well, you'd go to a guy like me. I'd plug my machine, and I'd analyze it. And then I'd say, okay, it needs this module, or it needs a sensor. There's lots of things that can go wrong. Resetting, it's a waste of time. The light's on for a reason. And unless you fix that problem, the light's never going to go out. And when you find out what the reason is on those airbag systems and how much money they cost, by law, they can't really refurbish them unless they're tested correctly. So, you got to buy a new one. They cost a fortune. Technically, the junkyards aren't even allowed to sell you an airbag that's used. Most states, it's against the law because it's too dangerous. You don't know if that thing works anymore. It's sitting there in a junkyard, right? Unless you want to spend a whole bunch of money, I say buckle up. Seatbelts work really good if you buckle them up. Well, you'd think that you got a fast car. Well, here's the world's fastest quadcopter. The guy kind of looks like Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys, right? You think you got a fast car, right? Goes 0 to 60. An insanely fast car would go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. This thing went from 0 to 186 miles an hour in 2 seconds. What insane speed, right? Now, it's not going to do it for all that long, but it proves that people want to make something. Hey, they go out and they do it. And at a top speed of 317 miles an hour. Man, that's one quadcopter. I gotta say, that is really something. I'm sure it makes a lot of noise, too. The neighbors probably wouldn't want that thing flying around, right? You're not gonna believe this. What can you do with your driveway? Well, in this case, in Washington, D.C., they turned the driveway into a house. There's such a lack of space in Washington, D.C., that they built this house that is, yes, you're not gonna believe this. The house is 6 feet wide. That's it. It was a driveway, and now there's some space. Let's turn it into a house. Can you imagine being in a 6-foot wide house? I would find it claustrophobic. Now, as you can see in the picture, it is full of what? Mirrors to make it look bigger, right? But the hilarious thing is, it's a 2-level house, but it's only 600 square feet, and this will tell you the insanity of Washington, D.C. The asking price was $799,000. For that tiny thing, you don't get a driveway because your house is what the driveway used to be, right? And it's 6 feet wide. You better not be claustrophobic, right? I mean, I've been in small apartments or small condos right now. You have a whole wall of mirrors to make it look like it's gigantic. You feel like you're in some kind of art exhibit or something. To turn a driveway into a house, only in Washington, D.C. And then they ask $799,000 for this stupid thing. I could think of better things than buying a 6-foot wide house that took over a driveway. Well, in an interview and research of 1,000 German drivers, scientists came to the conclusion that people that are always looking at their cell phones and stuff may be psychopaths. Now, I gotta say one thing. The study was done in Germany, right? Well, we can think of some of the world's most famous psychopaths that came from Germany. Adolf, Nietzsche, come on now. There's a lot of psychopaths coming out. Maybe it's a bad study. They need to use a different country, right? They call them problematic cell phone users, and they find that people are becoming psychotic with them because their fear of missing out. They have antisocial behavior, driving while they're looking at their cell phone. They could kill somebody. As this doctor says, there's 3 negative traits of these people that keep looking at their cell phones while they're driving. They call it the dark triad. Narcissism, Machiavellianism. People say, look at those people. They're always looking at their phones. Maybe they're all turning psychotic. right? It is a neurotic thing. There's no thing about that. But then again, if you know anything about history and psychology, Sigmund Freud called society a giant neurosis, that it's based on neuroses. And he had a good point, too, if you really think about it. You know, people are neurotic. They got to work all the time. They're given all kinds of money and everything because they work really hard, work all the time. But it is a neurosis. They can't stop working. You can't stop shopping. You can't stop looking at your phone, right? So I guess this German psychiatrist, he came to the point of saying, well, it's beyond neurosis. Now it's psychosis. And of course, if you do while you're driving, it is antisocial behavior. You can run into somebody and kill them, right? I've had many people got hit because somebody was looking at their stupid cell phone. So the psychiatrist in Germany came up with the conclusion that, and I quote, problematic smartphone use is an excellent predictor of dark triad personality traits. Now the question is it the people that are psychotic that do this, or is doing it turning them psychotic? Which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Well, regardless, people are doing many psychotic things these days. Maybe our society has gone psychotic. They see what's out there and it's driving them nuts. I don't blame them either. Hey, maybe we're all in a neurotic, psychotic society and we can't escape, and cell phones are what keep us going and keep us going. At least, well, I can look at this, I can look at that, you know, and ignore all the psychotic things that are happening in our society. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.